Hi, I'm Diane Morton-Gattullo, and welcome to Warehouse 34. And tonight I am fangirling over my guest, who is actually my friend since I'm 14, but his body of work is so insane that I absolutely respect, adore, love you and your wife. But Tommy Musto, thank you so much for coming here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for driving in from Long Island and taking time out of
There's no problem until I got to the Staten Island Expressway.
I know, it's crazy. It's
no,
crazy.
Long Island's terrible too.
No, Long Island, you know what? Once you pass into Long Island, then it's like, oh, wow, nice.
I try to never leave.
You just get stuck on like a highway looking at nothing here.
Yeah,
that's
true.
The difference. But Tommy, I want to share with everybody at CTV who you are. I mean, your Wikipedia page is kind of sick. It really is.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
I'd love to update it some more, but yeah, it's good.
No, you know what? That'll be something we have to work on, you know, because other people can update it for you and stuff like that. So when I met you when I was 14, I met you through Ralphie D, who I met when I was 12 and is like a brother to me.
Yes.
And you guys were so nice to me. I was so much younger. And now the age difference isn't a big deal, but I was like, you know, there's a big difference between 16 to 18 to 12 and 14.
Yes, definitely.
And you guys were so good
Especially if you're dating.
Well, I had such a crush on Joey Viola. Remember Joey Cuisine?
Yes. May rest in peace.
Yes. And then I eventually dated him when I was old enough, you know, because he didn't realize how old I was.
Okay.
And but you guys were all so good to me. I mean, so nice, so kind.
Well, it was easy to do. You were a nice person.
Thank you. But you made my love of the nightclub industry and going out and all the rest of that so much easier and so much fun. And I used to come back to high school with these great stories about like warrior, you know, weekends.
We were just as excited.
So how did you start in this business?
So as a little kid, I got interested in music like everyone else, and I had older brothers, and they were buying music. They were buying some rock, and my oldest brother was into R&B and stuff like that, so it was some conflicting things. Then, you know, I wanted to do something other than just listen, so I bought a guitar. Played with it for a little bit and said, this is too damn hard, I'm not doing this. So one of the guys who was a bench technician for my dad was a DJ. He wound up working at Heavy Custom Sound and during my childhood years, and he introduced me to a pair of turntables and a mixer, and it was probably late '76, early '77, around that time when
eighth grade. For
me.
So eighth grade going to freshman year in high school.
You know, I was definitely a young guy, but. It was something that I, as a person, you know, it's a little bit easier to manipulate doing that stuff than actually learning an instrument. And I was hooked. I was hooked from then. His name was Don DeFranco, by the way, and he was actually the head technician for WABC, and he passed away on September 11th. He was up at the top of the building. Yes, rest in peace, Don. And he's one of the people that's responsible for me to...
He changed your life.
Yeah, it changed my life, definitely. And from there, I just, you know, doing the usual mobile gigs and Sweet 16s and weddings, and I was pretty popular in the neighborhood where I grew up in Gravesend, Brooklyn. And then from there, we wound up getting into a record pool, which is every DJ's dream. And you get to meet other people from different boroughs. And I wound up meeting Carlos De Jesus, who was the program director at WKTU. And they were doing a contest for DJs for the mix show, which eventually became Paco Super Mix. But we wound up winning, Tommy Sozi and I, another person who's passed, unfortunately.
What a body of work, though.
May he rest in peace. And from there, we started doing radio mixes for many years and started doing production. It was probably, I'd say the early 80s. And
I believe music was the best.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, everything that started.
I mean,
in the 80s,
I certainly enjoy all of it, but I understand what you mean, and just my love for being technical and stuff like that, because my dad had this television repair shop and, you know, seeing all these technical things, I was always, what's next? What could I do that's behind the scenes? And buy a drum machine and keyboards and start doing stuff like that, and editing, which of course was probably before all that. And it just propelled from that, and then record companies wanting you to play their records. You're in the pool and you're on the radio,
right?
And you just get bombarded with people asking you to do things, and you create relationships, and then from there you start, you know, getting to know other people, A&R people within the business, and you just create a name for yourself. And just between the DJing and the records that we were making at the time, it really expanded from that. It's really
I
how it
remember
started.
your reputation as being really, really solid, and also you were very nice. And you know what? I say that. No. You were very, very nice. There were certain DJs who had attitudes, and they had, you know, I guess back then, you know, I was a bartender at 16, so I get that whole hype of people staring at you and creating that.
Yeah.
Not everybody was very cool with how they developed their persona. But you were always really, Danny Pooch, you, Ralphie, just nice guys.
And all people that I admire and went to go see before I was professionally doing it, Ralphie and Danny specifically. But I never wanted to be in the spotlight. I'm not like that person, and I always loved the fact that the DJ booth was high up somewhere, and you never knew where the music was coming from, but you were so enamored by, you know, the music selection or the mixing and stuff like that. At least I was, and I enjoyed that. It became something completely the opposite as I got older, and I got involved with that. I don't know if you remember Dangerous on the Dance Floor and Musto and Bones. We were the artists, like a CNC Music Factory, obviously not to that degree of success, but the DJ producer becomes the artist, and I was always apprehensive about that because, I mean, I grew up like everyone else listening to, you know, Marvin Gaye or whoever it might be, and you say, that's an artist, you know, they're up there singing or they're playing something, and I just felt like I was slighting that. You know, that's why I never wanted to really do that. But, you know, in the end, things changed over a course of time, and the DJ wound up being an artist was more applicable to what we were doing at the time. It's
strange, though, that you wanted to be up and removed. Because the crowd, you know, in the beginning, when, I mean, like in the 70s, I remember people would go to places and they just wanted to hear the music, and they didn't really look around too much. And then in the late 70s, it all changed. And now all of a sudden, you know, you're hearing a song, but you're trying to find out where's the person,
Saturday
where's this
Night
coming
Fever
from?
and so forth, you know.
And it thrust somebody like you into the spotlight, because now you want to know about them. Who are they? Why are they playing this? Like, who is this person? I mean,
from a standpoint of being a DJ myself, I did, you know, before I was really doing it professionally and doing mobile, I would go to the Odyssey, not even knowing Ralphie personally at that time, and we got to meet obviously afterward, or Danny Pooch when he was playing at Night Gallery, and
I loved Night Gallery.
Jasmine's on 3rd Avenue. I mean, I was really young then, but the guys on my corner where I grew up, they were going to Channel 80, Uncle Sam's, you know, all these Speaks and all these places that I couldn't go to, you know, and another place I remember, Elephas North, skiing, and I had the opportunity to go there as well. But when you're young, you want to be with the people who are older. They're cool and they're doing these things. So I had that opportunity to get to places where normally you wouldn't get to go at that age.
Only if you were a boy. See, if you were a girl, they used to let us in. I mean, I was 14 in Studio 54. There was no way they thought I was.
And if you've watched,
drinking age was 18. But there was no way I looked 18
And if you watched Raging Bull, you'd see all the young girls. I didn't know she was that young. You know?
But I mean, for you to get in, you know.
And there was a ton of, you know, Guido guys like me wanting to get into these places, and the door people started to getting a little selective, you know. And then I started going to Manhattan after that, which, you know, was really a pediment to be Italian and white to get into go to Studio or any of these places, you know. But I was fortunate in that the music part of it that I was involved in, it was, an open door policy to me to go to these places without all that other, politics stuff. But yeah, it's been some ride.
Well, I mean, I just have so many questions before we get into like your producing and and all the rest of that stuff. So, what record did you play that you said, I'm doing this because they really want me to play it through the record pool, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but the song became like a mega hit?
I mean, it wasn't so much a record pool pushing a record or the radio. It was more, I think, crowd wanted it. Things things that I really can't stand.
Well, we know, like Caribbean Queen is Ralphie's, Achilles heel.
I mean, it's Raining Men. I wasn't a big fan of High Energy, the song High Energy.
I never liked Raining Men either.
There's a few. I mean, I Will Survive was kind of torturous after a while.
Yes.
But look, you play.
They become anthems, though.
They do.
And people expect them.
And if you want people to like you as a DJ, you must satisfy. For me, it's always satisfy the women first. They're the first ones to be less apprehensive to get up to dance, and everybody else follows. That's always been my mantra of when I DJ. To do that. But even today, there's things that when I play in various places, you wind up having to play things that you're not crazy about, but the crowd likes it. So I mean,
I gotta ask you, do you know how to dance?
I do. I can dance. I mean, freestyle dancing, not coordinated like hustle.
Oh, I
or
can't
stuff
hustle
like that.
either.
I would love to. And to bring up that fact, I play once a month in New Jersey with a friend of mine, Nelson Roman, and he had asked me to come play, which I thought was great because the party he does is one of the parties he does is 20 years in the making, and to be asked to do that was kind of nice because I'm really an outsider, so to speak, and I love it. I mean, I watch these people dance, and it is.
Are they hustling?
Oh yeah, it's all hustle.
I can't do it.
It's amazing. I always wanted to do it, and as a young kid watching my older brother go out to dance, that's what they were doing at that time, in the mid-'70s when I was, I guess mid-'70s, early '70s, when he was going out dancing, and they were going out to hustle, and it always looked cool. I mean, some of it was a little like very timid looking, but people today, I mean, it's amazing. And what's great about it is it's not just people our age doing it. I see young people there that are absolutely incredible. You look at them and your jaw is left wide open. And there's also some young people there that are involved with throwing parties that I know about in Manhattan and stuff like that from this party, that they're in their 30s. And I go.
But they're keeping the music alive.
Yeah,
they're keeping
it's awesome. Which to me is the most important thing. I mean, because after we're gone, if we don't keep it alive, it's just going to die. And that upsets me more than anything. It transcends all the politics of all the other nonsense, because without us doing this, who's going to carry the torch? And the music is too good to let just die that way. Yeah,
I believe that. I believe that, for me, I've lived a beautiful life, besides my corporate gigs during the day, but I've lived a beautiful life at nighttime because of great DJs and having that relationship with the DJs, that I had total trust in them, that I was willing to put my time to work.
Oh yeah,
collaborating with them, because if they couldn't bring the crowd, there's nothing for me to do.
And that's a very tough thing to do.
The DJs were really the rock stars of the experience. And for me to trust somebody to say, I'm willing to put my time and effort to go into this place and go work there and call it my home or whatever.
No question. It's mandatory. Yeah. It's your time, your effort. You want to feed your family and so forth, and you want to go to a place that's happening. Yeah, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Or even startups. If it's a startup, and I know that a certain DJ or a certain group of DJs have committed to
doing it, then you feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, because then I know
but it's very difficult to do. For me personally, it's a very tough thing to have a following that is willing to come out every time you play. And I haven't had that luxury as a DJ. I mean, people come, I'm not saying that they don't come, but what I mean is that people who have done it consistently, that have a successful night or party that they throw,
right.
And not just even locally, people like, you know, Danny Crivet, or Body and Soul, things that are outside the boroughs that have been going on for years. It takes time to garner that, and it takes a commitment, and I think it's awesome that people really follow these things and really want to go, and it's not easy to do. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to start a night, or I'm going to open a club. You know, it takes a lot to really get that to happen.
It's funny because some people I've come across throughout my life don't have the understanding of really what it takes. The commitment is, you know, like multifold. You need to have, you know, a manager who actually knows how to manage.
Yeah.
You need to have a DJ who is willing to understand that you need to please the people and not play for themselves. Some people only want to play for themselves. And although I may think what they're playing is amazing, the majority of the people may not.
That's very, very true.
You need to, you know, understand that we're there to make money.
Especially locally in the boroughs. It's much, much different than going to Manhattan or going overseas DJing, where, you know, they're used to being educated about music, whereas I feel here people are expected to be entertained and listen to what they're used to, you know? And I mean, there's a meme around that it's one thing to play what people want to hear, but you have to play what they need to hear. And I think it's really important. And that, to me, is one of the elements that I think would help keep the scene alive, even in the boroughs. Like, we all know we have to play classics and things people know, but there's so much new music out there that is applicable and derived from disco and those older records that fit in really nice. And there are some that are obvious that you would know, but there's so much music that comes out on a daily basis.
I agree. I think it's sad that when I'm out socially, that I'm only hearing things that I absolutely know that I could recite the words.
Yes.
But, you know, back in the 80s, I would go to places and I basically fell in love with new music from what I just heard.
Specifically for that reason.
And we didn't have Shazam back then, so it took a lot of effort to figure out what it was.
And as a DJ, oh my God, if you didn't have it, you'd, you know, the whole thing about DJing back then was that you needed to really find out what was happening, and what was you finding the records really differentiated who you were as a DJ, whereas the record pool or friends or word of mouth, that was the only way. Now it's, you know, there's a website called TrackSource where a lot of people go to buy new dance music. The guys who own TrackSource, Mark Pomeroy and Brian Tappert, are friends of mine. I actually distributed their labels before this even existed.
Wow.
And they went and they had the foresight to start this business while vinyl was still the only thing.
Right.
And I'm so proud of them. I mean, they don't need me to be proud of them, but I'm so proud. They know I love them and I respect them. And the fact that they did something like that so early on was so amazing. And now it's the de facto standard. It's like people go to Apple Music or Amazon Music to buy records. The whole dance music community worldwide goes to this website.
Wow.
So it was really, really awesome, and I'm just proud to have, you know, some affiliation with their beginnings and stuff like that. And there's a lot of stories like that when it comes to the production company that I was involved with.
So share about that.
So after I was in the record pool and I was on the radio, I actually changed record pools to another. That record pool where I met Carlos De Jesus was Intermetro, and it was on Spring and Lafayette in Manhattan. I changed over to Shore Record Pool in the Bronx because that record pool had closed. And Bobby Davis, another person, rest in peace, he was the person who introduced me to my partner in Northcott Productions, which was Silvio Tancredi. He's also passed.
Wow.
I mean,
terrible.
We got to keep this alive and talk about these people. But he passed away, and but what I meant to say was Bobby introduced me to Silvio, and we eventually became partners in the business. Silvio was already in the business. He worked for Atlantic Records for a while, and he had the studio on 25 West 38th Street, which became one of the labels that he did, 25 West. Probably one of the biggest records that came out of that era was the BB Girls, called For the Same Man. There's a famous line in the beginning. He goes, the girl goes, "Hey girl, we got a party to go to tonight." Well, all right, So that, I know the song. Yeah. So it's been sampled a million times, and actually, after a long, hard-fought fight with Defected Records, which is probably the largest independent record label that there ever was, for that matter, at this point, I wound up selling it to them. Huh? I didn't want to for a long time because it was Silvio's baby, and it was done prior to me being partners with Silvio. Mm-hmm. But just the timing was right, and we wound up doing it. So they have it, and they put out a remix recently, but I'm sure they'll do much more with it. But when I became partners with Silvio, a whole bunch of other things happened. We started a new label called Fourth Floor Records. He had 25
I like
West.
The names, by the way. All the names mean something.
Yeah, well,
location, wherever you guys
exactly.
are.
It's really silly and kind of stupid, but
they're cool.
It's typical of the business. It was on the fourth floor, which is pretty funny.
This is Warehouse 34 because it's on Channel 34.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. So my partnership with him began in '86 and it ended in 2001 when we dissolved the company. A lot of stuff happened before that, in between that, but we became a distributor of many, many labels for many different people, and so many producers and remixers and engineers came through our door. Too many of them to mention right now, but there's been so many people who have come through the door that I'm very proud to have been some part of that, their lives, and I'm proud that they've been part of my life as well. And it's a long history that thankfully people follow, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
I'm just fangirling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell a little bit about Musto and Bones.
So Musto and Bones grew out of the beginnings of my partnership with Silvio. Frankie Bones was a local DJ, very popular as well.
That name is institutional name. Yeah. All of the names you've mentioned, but
so we started working together on many different things and many different styles of music. Kind of some freestyle stuff at that time, and then when house music started to get popular, we were doing that as well. But we started going in a different direction. I liked more soulful and R&B kind of stuff, and he liked more techno kind of stuff, which was kind of at the end of our relationship.
And I loved them both.
Yeah, which is why we wound up splitting, and not in a bad way. But Frankie and I worked on a lot of records together, and the two of us went to Europe together. It was the first time I was ever in Europe, and him as well. It was at the end of it, 1988. We were asked to come by a very good friend of mine still. His name was Tim Taylor. He worked for another company at the time with this guy, John Sherry, who was also passed. May he rest in peace.
So sad.
Yeah, so they asked us to come over, and we did a tour of all of the UK, from all the way down from London, all the way up to Scotland and Ireland. We were all over, up and down, and that's when the whole rave scene started.
I love raves.
Yeah.
I told Ralphie, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I know they call them festivals now, but to me, they're still raves.
Yes, so there are still raves, and which really now it's EDM and these festivals, which are much larger, and the DJs are much better paid. You have DJs who are making $20-30 million a year, which is completely insane in my opinion, but hey, if they can do it. But the raves were very crude things in the beginning. One in particular, which is the largest that we were involved in, was Energy. It was called Energy, and it was out in a field. And it had a huge sound system and a scaffolding, a stage.
I want go to that.
Yeah,
Oh
you know,
my God.
and there's video out there on YouTube of that, and I remember going there and getting to the rave at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we had to wait to go on, and the sun just started coming up, and there's like 20,000, a sea of people out there. It was scary, you know. It was a little.
Was it really?
Yeah,
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
How did it
was
feel?
a little intimidating, you know. Frankie was always a ham, so you know. But for me, I'm not ashamed to say it was definitely, you know, it was. Here we are up there like the Stones in front of 20,000 people, you know, just to play records. So it was crazy, and I'm glad I was a part of that. And from that, we wound up meeting.
Wait. So while you're doing this, once you get over the 20,000 people, do you really get so into it where you don't realize there's 20,000 people
I mean,
in front
after
of you?
a while, like everything else, you know, even if you're DJing for a club of 100 people, you know, everybody has a little bit of apprehensiveness or butterflies, whatever you want to call it, you know, when they're doing it. No matter.
And you're going to look
after a
up
couple
and
of
just
minutes,
go, okay.
it's not a big deal.
Okay, now go on. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's not a big deal after a while. But from that, and I'm kind of abbreviating and shortening things because I'm terrible with specifics and little aspects of things, but I'll try to remember the big things. Tim Palmer, who owned City Beat Records and XL, which had The Prodigy, and just an amazing guy who saw something in us, and I'm eternally grateful. He just had an operation, and thank God he's fine, and we're still in contact. And he said, "Why don't you guys do an album?" And we were like, really? And that's how Musto and Bones started. We did a couple of singles for him of one-offs. This thing called Energy Dawn, which was right after the rave. We went into the studio and made the record to kind of vibe on what we just experienced.
Right.
And then from that, he approached us to do the album. And from there, that's how the Musto and Bones album happened.
Most people never get this opportunity. They don't work or just, I mean, just that alone, you know, you could just turn around and go, listen, I did this, I'm all good, ready to go. But you just kept succeeding.
And the majority of my success, even to this day, was always outside of the U.S. And Musto and Bones was a thing that we hoped to kind of make us be noticed here, and it was. It came out on RCA Records here in the States, and many other labels all throughout the world. But Dangerous on the Dance Floor became like a strip club hit, which was hysterical after all that, because
listen, I've heard that in every club. Every club.
Yeah, but you know, it's just funny. But I think that part of it was nice to see.
If they're paying their royalties, let the strip clubs play Dangerous on the dance floor.
Yeah, you know, but it was good to see that we were having some success, because a lot of the records that we were making really weren't for the U.S. because they weren't ready for that.
Right.
They really weren't ready. And there was a whole time, you know, after disco's dead, and then in the 80s things were more R&B, and then at the end of the 80s when house music started to happen, it was very, very primitive. But that was what was great about it. And people couldn't understand that. Now, everywhere you go, people are hearing, you know, gotta have house music. And that was kind of later on, too.
So I love freestyle, and I love house.
Yeah.
And I like rap.
Yeah.
So, you know,
but most people aren't that open-minded. So it was a little difficult to incorporate the records that we were making there. And Frankie, when we came back, and he was going back and forth much more than I. That's a whole other story that if you ask me, I'll tell you why that happened. But Frankie came back.
I'll ask, you tell.
Yeah, Frankie was doing raves back and forth in the United States and making a name for himself doing that. So that was great. And I was involved in a lot of that too. We do the Limelight or a few other places. And there you go, Peter Gation's book. There you go.
Because I bartended at the Limelight.
There you go.
Yes.
But
disco ball for you.
One of the reasons why we had a lot of success, and they wanted us to keep coming back and forth, and I went several times back in the late 80s and early 90s. My ex-wife was paranoid with me going to Europe.
Really?
Because she came with us the first time, and she was freaking out that all these fangirls were there, and she was definitely afraid of that. And everybody was doing drugs. It was the beginning of ecstasy, people taking ecstasy. It was the summer of love there, the whole smiley face thing. Yeah. And she was completely, we just got engaged. She was
I remember.
Yeah. So she was completely paranoid with all that. So, I mean, I love DJing. I hate traveling.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I shouldn't say I hate traveling, but when you go outside of the U.S. to DJ, it's really, you're getting paid to fly, because it's a nightmare. Between, just going to England is not a big deal. It's 5-6 hours, whatever it is. But going to Germany, France, and further out in Eastern Europe, it's a long flight.
Yeah.
It's 9 hours, and then coming back is a little longer because of the jet stream. I was never, and not to, at that time we were carrying boxes of records, which was insane.
Yeah, I remember.
So my love for that, I mean, I'm a ham, and I love DJing and making people happy and doing that. But my real love was more production, and I saw myself, I guess, trying to keep my marriage happy and stay active in the business more, and that's kind of how I wound up being more an engineer, producer, because of that. And they all relied on me. Everybody wanted to do, and I couldn't do it all.
Right.
Which, another label that started while we were on 25 West 38th Street was New Groove, which is a big dance label, which is also owned by Defected right now. Defected, rather.
New Groove is probably one of the labels that most people who are not in the industry would know the name.
Would know the name, right. So they, Frank Mendez, who was a long friend of Silvio and mine, much more him, started this label, and he didn't have any producers, and it was all of us in the beginning, and all the first records were all of us. Ralphie, my friend Lenny D, Frankie, and I. Probably one of the largest record they ever had was called Looney Tunes. And it was Just As Long As I Got You, and it was a sample of a Love Committee record,
right.
A South Soul record, along with a lot of other samples and stuff like that, and it was a huge record. And then from that, it evolved into other stuff, but I was the only engineer, so I said, I can't do this anymore. I have to have a life. Wow. So Silvio's best friend, his sister's husband turned out to be this guy, Peter Dow. And I said, Peter, he was a piano player, jazz concert pianist, and I taught him how to engineer, and that was the end of it. He started doing these sessions, and he would do records for Bobby Condors and a whole bunch of other people.
Wow.
That wound up taking the load off me, and so I can start doing what I wanted to do and also have a life. But yeah, so that was the beginning of Northcott Productions and the labels from that standpoint. I know we kind of went around the circle.
But you know what? What an amazing time, though, back in the industry.
Yeah, it was.
The things that may have given you somewhat of, grief or anxiety because you can't please everybody and you can't be in every place at the same time. Mm-hmm. Just looking back at it, it's like, oh my God, you were there, you were who you were at that point in time.
And I'm still amazed to this day that on social media, people will find things that I completely forgot about. Not because I've done so many great things, but
you have.
Yeah, but the fact that they find these things, and they go, oh my God, I remember this record, and I'm like, oh, I haven't heard that in so long, and I'm really appreciative.
Tell me you don't have a copy of everything you've ever done.
I probably do. I have some stuff in storage.
I would be floored if you didn't.
I moved several times, a lot. I moved a lot in my first divorce, my only divorce, I should say, my first divorce. Knock on wood, right? But
I have to say, listen, your first wife was always an absolute pleasure and a very nice person with me, and your second wife I love, adore, and I know her for a really long time, independently from you, before the two of you.
Not just as long, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So you've always had a very nice personal life, you've never chose badly. Let's,
Unless someone wants to come out of the woodwork
no,
and
no,
say
no, 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 no. It's just always been, very nice.
Yeah, but I have to say that was always important to me. As much as I love music and being famous and all that stuff, home life was always important to me. It really was,
It's probably why the whole touring thing
yeah,
for you may have been a little bit of a...
Maybe I'm being a little bit too down about it, but it wasn't my favorite thing to do. And I'm sure you can ask other DJs. Like I look at a famous DJ, Louis Vega, who I don't know how he does it. He's never home. And he's traveling from country to country. That would drive me insane. I don't care if it's first class. It would drive me insane not being home. I like my routine. I like my family. I like my animals. I'm sure he does too.
Yeah.
But I could never be like that. That would be something that I would never
it's funny
do.
because my dad traveled for a living. And he was never home. And when I was 9, he just moved to another country. Right. It was like, okay, I can't live here anymore, and I have to go live, I have to go to work.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean you got to go to work? He's like, in another country. I'm like, this is not,
No.
No.
Not me. Yeah.
It was a strange thing, but, and he did it, and he loved it. Mm-hmm. It didn't make him less of a good dad, and didn't interfere with my relationship with him. It's just I never saw him on a daily basis.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
Excuse
you
my
want to know
French.
something, though? When you turn 14, it's not so bad.
Yeah, no,
as
I know.
the kid.
I had a young daughter. I mean, now she's older, obviously, but I had a daughter too, and I understand what
How
you
do
mean
you think
by
I
that.
met you guys when I was 14?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, because my dad wasn't here to turn
Yeah.
around and say, and I just told my mother I was sleeping at a friend's house.
How many people do you know who snuck out of their windows and jumped off roofs to get to?
Well, I actually told my mom that I could drive at 14.
Wow.
She just didn't, or didn't matter to her. She thought I was very responsible. And it was the strangest thing, because I was driving, at 14 years old around the neighborhood and,
Yeah. There's a few of us who did that.
Yeah, putting my toes in, going to nightclubs in the city, coming back, completely reeking of smoke and liquor. But I really wasn't a drinker. But I wasn't a drinker.
Right, okay.
But I did smoke. I was smoking at 14.
Yeah.
But I never drank. So I kind of felt like,
It's been a long time I quit smoking. I don't miss that.
you know what? On and off my whole life. So it's been a crazy ride. So if you had to look back at all of this and all of the places that you've been to through your whole musical career and everything, what is the one moment that you said to yourself, my God, I'm on another level. I'm not that kid from Gravesend anymore?
It would probably have to be that rave that I mentioned back in '89. Because of just the sheer fact that it was so huge, and during that time we were doing interviews on radio. Musto and Bones was on Top of the Pops, which has been around since the 50s, I believe. Not me personally, the rappers who were in the group. That was pretty amazing. I mean, England, obviously, we were all enamored by the Beatles and all the music that came out, and they're just as enamored. They love the Beach Boys and all the stuff that came out of America. But going to another country and first seeing that people actually, one knew who you were and had this, fascination with you, was be like, it's sick.
And the desire to spend money to go see you.
Yeah.
To bring you there.
Well, forget about that, right?
Yeah, it's like.
But yeah, that definitely was the moment that said, man, maybe I could do this for the rest of my life, But yeah, it was pretty amazing. And since then, I've had multiple moments that have solidified those feelings. But if I had to say anything, that was the moment that really said, holy moly, this is for real, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that someone actually, wants to hear you do something. I mean, back during that time before we even went, people were licensing records that we were making. And we had, few pieces of equipment. It was so crude. And we made some of our greatest records with this stuff. And, the fax machine would be in the studio. And you'd hear something come through. And, we'd be there at 3, 4 in the morning working on something. And a fax would come through that they want to license. And I'm like, oh, my God, they want to license something. Somebody in Germany or whoever it was. One of the first people was very famous right now. His name is Dave Lee. He's a very famous producer, DJ, and label owner in the UK. He was one of the first ones to actually license something, and he's still doing it today, and I'm still friends with him today, and he's still making great records today. Pretty awesome guy. Yeah.
That is so cool. If you did not choose this career path, and you never ever like walked into your dad's store and became, you know, just brought into this world.
A meteorologist.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with weather, if anything.
I could just see you on the plane going to England saying, this flight's going pretty good.
Yeah, you know, that would be something. Yeah, I mean, some other things that I'd love to mention that I definitely don't want to forget to mention. During the time in the early 90s, my work with Victor Simonelli.
Such a nice person.
Very nice guy.
Yes.
Victor Simonelli. We made some great records together that still stand the test of time, that people in America probably have no idea. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's a generalization. Maybe local people that we deal with may not even know about them. There's been so many labels that have come through my door with Silvio. One of the absolute most successful, and we're still friends today, is Henry Street. Henry Street, my friend Johnny D, John DeMairo.
See, now I've heard that name recently because I had another DJ on. I met him through you, actually. Mike.
Yeah, exactly. We just DJ'd a party with him.
What's Mike's last name again?
Ferrer.
You have to say it because I butcher everyone's last
Ferrer,
name.
yes.
So that's why. And he mentioned Henry Street Records.
Yeah, so Henry Street was one of the labels, and it was definitely by far one of the most successful labels that we ever dealt with. We started it together. It still exists today. Obviously, my company distributing is not there. But the largest record, which everyone knows and is still being sampled and still today, is the Bucketheads. These sounds fall into our mind. It was a sample from Chicago, Street Player. If you need me to sing it, I will.
Go ahead.
These sounds fall into my mind. You like that? Just so people know what it is.
Yes.
So that record has sold millions of copies throughout the world. It was licensed to every country, and it was because of Johnny's relationship with Kenny Gonzalez, which is one half of Masters at Work, him and Louis Vega. But there's been so many other records on that label. I mean, Armand Van Helden, who's also
I have to have him on.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to invite him on. I would like to have your friend on.
Oh, yeah, he'll talk you to death for sure.
No, that's good.
But he was working at Atlantic Records at the time, and he was plugged into every producer and had relationships with every producer, and we put out such great records. It was very, very successful. The Sulfuric guys, who I mentioned, another person which not a lot of people locally won't know as a person, Asun Lade, who is a guy who just walked into my office and gave me his cassette tape, and I wound up falling in love with him, literally, because he's such a nice guy. But he came into my office, he had a bone through his nose about this long and huge earrings, and he was dressed in African dress, and I was shocked that he picked me, or picked my company, but from the moment I met him, I was like, this guy is amazing. And he actually, his start was he produced the artist Ricardo. The name of the record was, God, I forget the name of the record. It was very popular in the 90s. God forgive me for not being mentioned, especially on TV, not remember the title. But he produced this record. It was a big pop record. And he wanted to start a house label and underground and more rhythmic and African-based. And we started that label with him. I'm still friends with him today. He's very successful. He travels all over the world. I know there's people who may watch this and say, you didn't mention my name. Yeah. There's so many. At one point, we had 12 labels we were distributing. Oof. It was crazy. We had 7 employees, 12 labels. I had this recording studio on Houston and Broadway, 594 Broadway. We didn't name any labels 594.
Why not?
I don't know.
Maybe there's a label in the making you still have to do.
So it was a great run. And then at that time, Napster came out, and people were sharing files.
Yes.
September 11th happened. So that's when I really decided. Said, you know what, the business is changing. My remix work wasn't as good as it was in the years earlier, which we didn't talk about, by the way.
Talk about it. I'm just going to.
So at that point, I wound up changing careers.
I'm just a fan.
Yeah,
you need to know that I'm just a fan. I'm just listening.
But during the time that I was doing remixes for major labels, and Johnny D was definitely responsible for doing some records for Atlantic. One other person, Frank Serrallo, who worked for Epic Records, he was a big fan and introduced me to a lot of other people. And at that time, I mean, the most notable ones are Michael Jackson, Gloria Estefan, John Cicada. I just recently posted something I did with Olivia Newton-John. She just passed away. May she rest in peace. There's been many others, and I always think of those when someone asks me off the top of my head. But there's been a lot of them.
See, I remember when you were involved with some of those projects and stuff like that.
Yeah, they were very proud moments.
And we were all so happy to root for you.
Yeah.
We were like, yay,
yeah,
Tommy,
it was awesome,
yay.
and I appreciate that. I mean, the fact that you have anything to do with Michael Jackson is like, this little jerk from Brooklyn. So the fact that even happened, I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity. And to hear that on the radio, and that was the biggest thing, when I was a kid DJing and hearing my mixes along with Tommy Sosie at the time on the radio, I mean, it was the biggest thrill ever. Yeah. I mean, to be able to cruise around in your car and listen to yourself on the radio. Oh, yeah. I mean, at that time, I was influenced by, people like Shep Pettibone, Ted Currier, who was on BLS at the time, Tony Humphries. These were all people who I idolized, and to be able to make that leap in a couple of years was just outstanding. It was really, I'll always cherish those moments,
That's got to be one of those moments, like looking out in the middle of the rave. Just going, oh my God, I'm driving on the Belt Parkway and my music's on the radio,
There are many times in your life where you go through things that, you're depressed or you're sad about something, and I always wind up just, turning the projector back and say, you know what, I can overcome this. I actually did this, and I actually did this. And it kind of helps you. I mean, besides God, I'm a big God guy. But I think that, when you try to think of some of your accomplishments and I'm terrible with beating myself up. I'm a Virgo. I don't know if that means anything.
Oh, my daughter's a Virgo.
Yeah, I'm very introspectful and constantly second-guessing myself, and yeah.
I'm a Sagittarius.
Yeah.
I just jump.
I wish I could do that. I admire that so much,
Jump.
Yeah.
I'll land on my feet. I know I will.
That's awesome, but yeah, those are some of the qualities that I have that I'm really hard on myself, but not necessarily because.
But maybe that's also what makes you so endearing and why everybody so respects you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, you're welcome, but it's like, I don't know anybody who doesn't like you and who doesn't. I'm sure there may be somebody like in, I don't know, maybe you didn't play their song in South America or someplace in Ukraine or something like that.
There's definitely haters. I'm sure there's haters out there locally.
Listen, I wouldn't know any of them because I just know you to be really probably one of those. You and Ralphie are kind of like above the fray.
Yeah.
You've reached a level
I wouldn't say that. I would never, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
No, because you guys reached a level of success along with the Victors.
Yeah.
I most recently met Victor a couple of months ago, I think. Maybe it was 2 or 3 months ago.
He came to some event.
Yeah, he is such a nice.
He really, he
oh my God, what a humble person.
Yeah.
What an absolute humble person.
And it's just getting back to
Gary Baxter, those guys.
Gary,
I mean, really,
Devin,
salt of the earth.
Yes, no, definitely.
You guys are all, maybe this is a better way to put it. It's the water where all you guys come from that made you all such nice guys.
Well, I think that as a person, you have to really.
I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you one of the reasons why I think you're such a nice guy, and you're never going to remember this. But when I turned 30, I didn't think it would hit me so hard. But it did.
Right.
You know, because there's one
I
thing
wish I
about...
was 30.
No, I know. Now that I'm going to be 59
Yes,
in a couple of months.
I'm going to be 59 too next month. So
Yeah,
I know.
December.
Yeah.
So I remember turning 30, I was like, oh, no, I'm fine. And then I just had such a meltdown, and I had really nice hair. And I went and I got a haircut.
Nice.
No. I went and I got a haircut. Didn't like it. Cried. Made them cut it shorter.
Right.
Didn't like it.
I
Cried.
remember that period.
Went a little shorter, and then I had a perm. And you... Ralphie's ex-wife's dad had the hair salon.
Okay, yeah.
And Janine was sitting there with me, and she called Ralphie, and I think you guys were together, and you both walked in. And I'll never forget the two of you. I knew whatever I had done to my hair was horrendous. And I'm crying like a sobbing man. 30 years old, look at my hair. And the both of you were so nice to me.
Yeah.
You were like, it's okay.
Don't worry, it's beautiful.
Yes, you look beautiful. Maybe if you moved it like that. I'll never forget that. You and
It's the
Ralphie.
right thing to do. It was the right thing to do.
You had compassion for me because I was a hot friggin' mess, hysterical crying, going through a 30-year-old crisis. But that said volumes. I never forgot that.
I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate it.
Getting back with Ralphie, it pays to mention, or it makes sense for me to mention that while I was a fanboy while he was DJing, because here he is playing in clubs and I'm playing mobile parties, and I'm like, how the hell do I get to do that? And he was always helped for, like, if he left the place, he'd get me in, and 718 scan all over the place. And actually, the end of the Penthouse, Ralphie was there, then I was the last DJ there. There was nobody there, but
I used to go to the Penthouse in high school.
So Ralphie was, I guess, my help to do that, and his dream was to do more production. So he would lean on at that time I was with Tommy Sozzi, and that's how we did the Tommy Boy mega mix, and we wound up winning. The whole world submitted mixes for this, and Tommy Boy Records, if anyone doesn't know, Planet Rock, there's a ton of records.
Tommy Boy was
Play Your Own Risk. It was the label that we all freaked out, especially when electro first came about, and we wound up winning that contest, which was like insane out of all the people who submitted. So we had our mix pressed on record, and from there we actually went to Tom Silverman's house, the owner of the label where he had a studio, and we were able to work with the original masters of all these records.
Wow.
Which was like we were just, in heaven as DJs at that time. Being able to do that was really awesome. So I just wanted to make note of that, because that was a pretty integral time within our relationship.
Ralphie loves you. All of that. I mean, listen.
Yeah, it's been a long.
It's been a long
time,
ride. A long ride. He's a little older than us, Ralphie, by just a few years.
Yeah. But it's funny, like you said.
But he's like the brother I've never had.
During time periods, it doesn't really matter now, but back then. But I remember, I remember distinctly Tommy Sozzi and I going to the Odyssey. I don't even know how we got in, but we did. And I used to crack up because the walls were like aluminum foil. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Do you remember the girls who used to storm the DJ booth?
Yes, it's insane.
So I don't want to eat up our time with this story, but I used to have to go to the 2001 Odyssey on Friday nights for just because I had to walk in with somebody. I was 12, and they put me in the DJ booth. And the people would come in, and the first time I was there, and Ralphie was with Joey Viola, and he's screaming, close the gate, close the gate. I didn't know there was a gate. And it was that like a scissor type of gate.
Right. Yeah.
And I just slammed it shut just as the girls piled on it. I'm 12 just watching these screaming girls. I'm like this. Like, what are they doing? Yep. And Joey Viola had the black glasses, and they were doing like Stevie Wonder stuff on the upright piano.
He was such a fun guy,
Ralphie spinning, and these girls start ripping their shirts open. Remember, I'm 12.
Yeah.
I'm still in elementary school. I'm like
insane.
This, going, what the F? They had their names written in the inside of their bras. They were sticking their bras through the DJ booth. Ralphie's 16. He's a 16-year-old boy getting like girls sticking their bras in the booth.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy. And,
yeah.
And you know,
I was like, what kind of life is this?
As I became friends with him and knew them both older, they were. I remember they had a house that they used to rent in Sheepshead. I think it was Sheepshead Bay Road. I forget exactly where it was, but it was in that area. And I used to go, I can't hang out with them. They're too crazy.
I dated Joey for a little while, and then
he was very handsome.
Oh, please. Yes, he was.
He was hysterical.
He was very handsome.
He was funny as hell.
And he was even more handsome when he was rocking my Porsche Carrera sunglasses that he wore all the time. Okay. And when I broke up with him, I snatched those glasses. It's the only thing I've ever taken back from a guy.
Really?
Yes. I was like, give me back those. You're using my identity.
Yeah.
These are my glasses. But no, he was so much fun. So much fun. You know what? In fact, I wish I had never dated him, because I probably would have had a better friendship with him and had a better ride with the whole thing. No, because
it's all a learning experience.
He was so much fun.
Yeah.
And anywhere he went, he was like a crazy party, in a box.
Was.
Yeah.
And God wanted him for some reason. I guess he needed him for something.
Needed a DJ up there.
He was so young.
Yes.
It's like crazy,
Yeah. He needed to.
I don't think Ralphie ever got over that.
You know what? I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm sad that I didn't. I probably didn't make up with Joey, but we were also young, so whoever thought anything like that would ever happen. And then I didn't make up with him right away. And then I saw him a little bit, and I laughed. I said, whatever. We were young and dumb.
Yeah.
You cheated on me. In retrospect, the 80s, that's all boys did back then. So I became...
They still do.
I became more jaded to it after that. I was like, I don't know why I stopped talking to you. Like, you're a DJ and you're a boy and it's the 80s and we're from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like, I should have expected this, But, so I'm glad... But I never got to that level of deep friendship again. And I'm sorry for that. I probably, But he was so much fun.
Yeah, he definitely was.
Yeah.
Definitely was. DJs in Brooklyn...
It was wild. It was wild.
Definitely
I know that you reached like crazy success with all of this, and then you just decided one day you wanted to do something else. Like I do corporate. Like I'm corporate during the day.
I didn't decide. I think it was decided for me. I had a huge nut having the studio and staff and pressing records, having pressing records and making CDs. It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
And you got your finances on the line for that. When the business started to change, I still had a house and kids and a wife, and it just was not happening, And I just saw myself having to, do insane things and make stupid creative decisions that I normally wouldn't make just for the money. And I didn't want to ruin my reputation. So I said, you know what? Maybe it's time to make a change. And I did.
You've been very successful at your change.
Yeah, well, it took a long time. In 2001, I left music.
I don't think you truly ever really left music.
No, but I was very bitter for a long time.
Yeah?
From 2001 probably till 2005, 6, I didn't even want to hear music. I was so angry that I couldn't do what I loved for the rest of my life. And I wasn't willing to trash my personal life just to be selfish and do it.
Right.
My ex-wife never appreciated that. Maybe I should make her watch this. But I went and I said, if I can't do music, I want to be where money is. So what did I do? I went and I became a broker at Morgan Stanley. So I went from sitting behind a console, smoking pot, drinking, going out every night, making records, to sitting in a cubicle studying for my Series 7. And
look at you now.
And I had 3 months to take all my tests, and I did it. And from there, I went from Morgan Stanley to Citigroup, from Citigroup to Wells Fargo, and now I work for an independent company called LPL. And it's been 22 years, and I have a beautiful business and client base of clients that I love, people that really appreciate what I do for them.
Right.
And thankfully, it's growing exponentially. And essentially what happened was I had the finance and the time now, having an established business, to get back into music. So that's what I've been doing recently.
I know that you have decided to rejoin the world of music and that you are gifting everybody with your mega talent.
Oh, thank you.
Although you're so shy when you do it, you play, like you just did something at Midland Beach, right?
I did with Mike Ferrer. It was something by the boardwalk that we did. It was during the day. A few weeks ago, I was at South Fin with Frankie, who he's always given me the opportunity to play. He has his own crowd that follows him forever, which I was talking to before. It's very difficult. Like Pastels has their crowd.
Right.
People are religiously going. It's very difficult to have an audience that loves what you do and follow, and I really respect that.
But it's part of that. Like the original, anybody who originally went into a club back in the 80s and wanted to know more about the DJ, you become friends with them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Had I not been a bartender, would I have been friends with so many DJs? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it took one to become friends with to meet all the others.
Right. There's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of hatery too, but a lot of camaraderie. But Frankie was nice enough to have me join him over the years, and I appreciate that. And he's got a great following. They follow him all over the place. And I look at social media, I'm like, how many times could these people go out? Aren't they tired of seeing each other?
You know what? When you love, like, the customers that I have, they enjoy coming out. And I got to tell you, they think I'm keeping them young.
Yeah.
They're keeping me young.
Yeah, no, I think it works both ways.
I respect you and I love you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I love you too. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.